Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're gearing up for a data analyst interview, you already know your technical skills. Things like your SQL queries, your Python scripts, your dashboard designs, those are what get your foot in the door. But the reality? How you actually talk about your work is what gets you the job. So today, we're diving into a language guide specifically for data analyst candidates, and we'll be focusing entirely on how to communicate your experience clearly, confidently, and above all, professionally.
Let's kick things off with a super quick example. Just compare saying, I did a decision, with, I made a data-driven decision. Now, sure, the meaning of the first one is totally understandable, but that second phrase, that is exactly what an interviewer is actually listening for. It's the polished, standard phrasing used in the industry. The stakes here are surprisingly high, because using an awkward word combination just sounds a bit unnatural, and it can subtly undermine your authority in the room, even if the underlying technical work you did was absolutely brilliant. So, here is our roadmap for today. We're looking at 4 key building blocks. First up, nailing data analyst collocations. Second, telling time with interview tenses. Third, smart hedging to sound professional. And finally, structuring stories with the STAR method.
All right, let's jump straight into block number 1, nailing data analyst collocations.
If you're wondering what a collocation is, it's just a pair or a group of words that naturally go together in English. For example, check out the subtle difference in the verbs here. You might be really tempted to say that you take insights or maybe get insights from your data. But in a formal business context, the standard verb is draw. We draw insights from data. It implies this really careful, deliberate examination to find meaningful conclusions. It's a tiny shift, I know, but saying I draw insights instantly signals to the interviewer that you belong in that professional environment.
And there are a few more of these essential power verbs you'll definitely want to memorize. You identify trends and patterns. You present findings. You don't just show or tell them to people. You make decisions, you collaborate with teams, and you run experiments or queries. And here's a particularly strong one. Deliver recommendations. Just compare that in your head to giving suggestions. Giving suggestions sounds kind of casual, right? Maybe even a bit optional. But when you deliver recommendations, you're presenting them with total authority and a real commitment to action. It is highly recommended that you practice these verbs in full sentences about your own experience so you aren't hunting for the right words under pressure.
Moving right along to part 2, telling time with interview tenses.
Okay, in an interview, choosing the right tense to talk about your past is absolutely critical. The present perfect tense is what you use for general experience, things that are still true right now, basically connecting the past to the present. You'll hear signal words like so far, since, or recently. The past simple, on the flip side, is exclusively for completed actions that happened at a specific, finished point in time. Think signal words like last year, in 2022, or last Monday.
To put that into perspective, just picture a typical career timeline. Let's say you've been using SQL from 5 years ago right up to the present day. That continuous line requires the present perfect. You'd say, I have worked with SQL for 5 years. But let's say last March you did a specific project. That is a fixed, finished event. So for that, you use the past simple. I built a dashboard for the finance team last March. Basically, you're going to frequently use the present perfect to introduce your broad general skills, and then you'll switch over to the past simple to dive into specific story examples.
And this actually brings us to a super common mistake candidates make. Let's say an interviewer asks about a specific tool. A candidate might say, I never used Python using the past simple. But honestly, that sounds like you're talking about one specific afternoon in the past. Because it's a broad, general claim about your entire life experience up to this exact moment, you absolutely must use the present perfect. I have never used Python, but I am keen to learn. See the difference? It immediately sounds so much more fluent and natural.
All right, on to part 3, smart hedging to sound professional.
So what exactly do we mean by hedging? Well, it's the use of careful, qualified language. Because let's be real, in analytical roles, being 100% certain about the root cause of a trend is pretty rare. Good analysts hedge their claims to clearly distinguish between what the data definitively shows and what they are merely interpreting it to mean. And I want to be clear, this isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually a massive green flag for an interviewer because it demonstrates deep critical thinking and care.
Take a look at this statement. The data appears to suggest that the new onboarding flow may be contributing to user drop-off. Imagine bursting into an interview and just saying, users are leaving because of the new onboarding flow. Sure, it sounds confident, but it's also a little reckless. This hedged version, however, perfectly separates facts from assumptions. You are being precise, and because you're precise, you are inherently more trustworthy.
So here is a really handy hedging toolkit for you.
You can use phrases like, the data appears to show, when you want to describe your findings. If you're offering up an explanation, try saying, this might be related to. Now, if you are actively recommending an action, saying it might be worth considering really softens the command and makes you sound collaborative. And hey, if you simply don't know the answer, without more data it is difficult to say is a perfectly acceptable, highly professional response. Just remember, hedging doesn't mean you're being vague or dodging the question. You are still giving a solid answer. You're just accurately calibrating your level of confidence.
And finally, part 4, structuring stories with STAR.
Interviewers absolutely love competency-based questions. You know the ones, those tell me about a time when questions. The absolute biggest trap here is rambling. And the STAR method is the ultimate framework to prevent exactly that. It stands for situation, task, action, and result. It basically guarantees your answer will have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Let's actually build a mini narrative together right now.
So you always start with the situation and the task. You want to set the context, but keep it incredibly brief. Literally just 1 or 2 sentences. User engagement dropped over 2 months. Boom. That's the situation. I was asked to investigate the cause and present recommendations. And that's the task. It's clean, it's direct. Notice how there's no wasted time explaining the entire history of the company. It jumps right into the problem.
Next comes the action, and honestly, this is the most important part of your answer. This details the specific steps you took. I queried the database. I ran an A/B analysis. I collaborated with engineering. Notice what we're doing here? We are perfectly utilizing that past simple tense for completed actions, and we're packing the sentence with those professional data analyst collocations we talked about earlier.
Finally, the result. You must always end with the outcome, and whenever possible, use hard numbers to demonstrate real, tangible impact. For example, you could say, after the engineering team resolved the bug I identified, engagement recovered by 18% within 10 days. And listen, even if a project ultimately failed, you can still use this result step to explain the valuable lessons you drew from the data.
So, a quick word on pacing. How long should a good STAR story actually take to tell? The magic number here is 90. A truly strong answer should take between 90 seconds and 2.5 minutes. If you wrap up in under a minute, you probably aren't giving quite enough detail in your action step. But if you're talking for past 3 minutes, you are definitely losing the interviewer's focus.
When you put it all together, the perfect interview answer really isn't about using overly complicated dictionary vocabulary. And it's certainly not about pretending you're a native speaker if you aren't. It is entirely about communicating with clarity and precision. You use clear collocations. You use correct tenses to accurately frame your timeline. You use honest hedging to showcase your critical thinking. And you use the STAR method to structure your stories perfectly.
Mastering these 4 language skills is absolutely the key to making a truly strong impression. I'd highly recommend preparing 3 or 4 of these STAR examples and practicing them out loud using these exact techniques before your next big interview. Your resume data already shows you have the technical skills, but when you finally walk into that interview room, what story will your data tell? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.